Our agenda today is as follows. I will begin with a personal history. As the keynote freshman in the room, I want to give you just a little bit about myself to get us started. I will also be using a case study to anchor this presentation and guide the discussion this afternoon. I will be discussing the ABCs and the early warning indicator system, and we will close with some ideas around community support engagement. The specific aim of this presentation is to demonstrate how combining the ABC and EWI system data with qualitative information can lead to strong intervention plans for students. And the strength of those plans is only enhanced by building community partnerships. So let's begin. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. Now I need you to keep that in mind because you will hear this again later in the presentation. From an early age, I was always drawn to helping professions. When I was a little boy, I wanted to be a chemist. One year, I begged my parents for a chemistry set, and they did eventually get me that chemistry set. I had to have this chemistry set because my ultimate goal at this point in my life was to become a chemist in the hopes of curing cancer. Little did I know that there is a whole bunch of math involved in chemistry. And don't get me wrong, I love math, just not that type of math. As a middle school student, I decided I wanted to be a judge. Specifically, I wanted to serve on the Supreme Court, much like my hero jurist, Thurgood Marshall, pictured here on the right, the first African American to serve on the highest court in the land. Justice Marshall was an inspiration in that his life was dedicated to expanding and protecting the civil rights of all Americans. As a judge, I felt that I could also do my part to help bend the arc of the moral universe towards justice. In high school, my senior superlative was friendliest. I was the student that all of my peers brought their problems to. I dispensed all types of advice, relationship advice, career advice, anything they needed. And who was I? I mean, I had no education, no license, no nothing. But I did what I could to help others. I suppose my advice was somewhat decent because they kept coming back for more. So I did some research and discovered that there is a profession that pays you to do this type of work. So in college, I majored in psychology. I just knew I was going to hang up a shingle and have this flourishing private practice with clients discussing their issues of life, and I would be there to offer guidance and support as to appropriate courses of action. After college, I went to graduate school and majored in community psychology. Although not a clinical program, community psychology piqued my interest by having a broader impact on individual lives. Coincidentally, my degree program was housed in the School of Education. Little did I know that this would be my beginning journey in education. In graduate school, I TA'd several courses, and my advisor gave me plenty of autonomy in teaching the content. I was in heaven. I loved teaching. I loved being able to impart knowledge in the hopes that my students will use that knowledge in the future for some greater good. That brings me here today. Since completing graduate school, I have dedicated my career to the tagline you see here for the Daniel Foundation, improving the odds for kids. I mean, that's me. That's what I do. At this time, I have to thank Dr. Bob Balfaz, yesterday's keynote speaker, for my first job in the education field. I was a school transformation facilitator for his talent development secondary program at Johns Hopkins University. He is a giant in the field. His groundbreaking research on early warning indicators and dropout prevention continues to drive the work that I do to improve the odds for kids. And as I learned in Psych 101, through transference, I too am a giant in the field. Just not yet, but one day. In my current role as intervention specialist with the District of Columbia Public Schools, I work with schools to provide interventions and resources for students who may be struggling academically or behaviorally. Specifically, my support to schools includes providing information and guidance to principals and intervention coordinators, ensuring that schools are following the district-wide intervention plan and policies, directing data efforts to determine the effectiveness of intervention implementation, and training intervention teams in implementing the district-wide intervention model. I also attribute a lot of my success in doing this work to my family. They constantly instilled in me the value of a good education and never let me compromise in my pursuits in attaining one. And for that, I am very thankful for each and every one of them, each and every day. So shout out to the Lelands. All right. One of the critical components of my work is spent converting Excel spreadsheets like the one you see here into beautiful, stunning visual representations that look like this. This graph was created to quantify an off-to-real problem, voiced by teachers and administrators. The student is failing because he or she is not coming to school. Yes, we know this instinctually and anecdotally, but we need to have some numbers to back it up. As you can see, the average in-seat attendance for a student failing English and math at this school was 48%. Almost half the attendance of a student passing both of those courses. As data specialists, we are at times handicapped by the numbers we see, and it is quite easy to forget that there is a real live young person attached to these numbers. Which brings me to our case study. I want you to meet Darwin Lee. Darwin Lee is an alias. I do not want to end up in FERPA jail. In fact, Darwin Lee is my alias. In graduate school, we had a project that involved contacting local government officials, and my professor insisted that we adopt pseudonyms. So, if I ever introduce myself to you as Darwin Lee, I'm on a top secret mission. I'm in stealth mode. All right, so let's learn a little bit about Darwin. Now, Darwin Lee is a 9th grade student at a comprehensive public high school in DC. Darwin was failing every subject. He had missed 19 days in the current term and had 2 out-of-school suspensions. His out-of-school suspensions were the result of fighting, and he was known to be gang affiliated. In short, we used the ABCs in our early warning indicator system to flag Darwin as a student of concern. But before we can consider what to do after the ABCs, I want to briefly make sure we all know our ABCs. The ABCs are attendance, behavior, and course performance in English and math. This isn't to suggest that the other subjects are not important, but these ABCs are predictors of high school dropout. All right? The EWI system used the ABCs to identify those students most at risk for dropping out. Our EWI system in DCPS used in-seat attendance for the attendance domain, In-seat attendance is the number of days a student is present at the school over the number of days the student is registered at the school. Behavior is the number of approved out-of-school suspensions, and course performance is measured by the term grade in English and math. Based on these criteria, we determine the intensity of the intervention provided for a student. Tier 1 students are generally successful with universal whole school interventions. Tier 2 students may need targeted small group support. And Tier 3 students should receive intensive individual support. These criteria are not perfect. For instance, we have to make lemonade out of the behavior data lemon due to the fact that there are many unofficial out-of-school suspensions that are not captured by our system. However, it was these criteria that alerted the teacher team to Darwin's need for intervention. Specifically, Darwin was read in 2 domains: his attendance, which was 58%, and course performance because he was failing both English and math. He was yellow in behavior because he had 2 overall suspensions. This suggests that Darwin should receive a Tier 3 intensive one-on-one intervention. Once students have been identified by our system, we conduct an intervention meeting to develop a specific plan to address the concern. An intervention meeting is an interdisciplinary teacher team meeting to create, coordinate, and monitor interventions for students who are exhibiting those early warning indicators. It is a time to dig deeper into student data. It is a time to work collaboratively with team members to build capacity. And the work gets done best when meetings are protected, and that means those meetings occur on a consistent basis, which demonstrates that this intervention meeting process is valued. These meetings are normed, which means there are high expectations for each of the team members, and these meetings are data-driven. All right, this next slide is just a fancy way of saying that the goal of the intervention meeting is to ultimately reverse the detrimental effects of the dropout crisis by providing the right interventions to the right students at the right intensity. Ideally, the team is composed of the following: the coordinator, who facilitates the meeting, the counselor, science, math, social studies, and English teachers. Elective teachers can be present if the schedule permits, the social worker, and an administrator or a dean. The green dots on this slide represent the shared cohort of students. And ideally, we would want students to all be green, but in the interim, we'll get them there. And each adult around this table should be able to speak in some meaningful way on each student. As you can see, there are more teachers around this table than any other adult in the building. That's because classroom teachers are our eyes and ears as to what is going on in the lives of our students. In the absence of an early warning indicator system, they are our students' first line of defense as to ascertaining an appropriate intervention. Going back to Darwin, in addition to him being flagged by the data, an astute teacher also mentioned that she was concerned about him. She made several attempts to contact Darwin's family, but to no avail, and insisted that a meeting be held to get Darwin back on track. That's why intervention teams are so important. They are critically important to the work that we do with students. Teams know each other and work together frequently. You may recall that Darwin was passing one course, and that was his science course. In the intervention meeting, his science teacher mentioned that Darwin loved biology and dreamed of becoming a zoologist. The science teacher offered this information as a possible way to engage Darwin in other content areas. For instance, Darwin's English teacher provided him with some makeup assignments based on informational texts on wild animals. Teams know the academic standards and behavioral expectations for their students. Teams also know the students of concern, have a history of resolving similar problems, and have a commitment to learning new skills to increase current and future effectiveness. Teacher teams make our data come alive. What you see on this slide is our intervention planning process. The school used the On-Track EDU program as its EWI system of record. The EWI data was fed daily from our from our student information system to On-Track, and our decision points are captured in On-Track. The qualitative information and contextual evidence that the teacher team provides allows us to craft personalized interventions that speak to individual student needs, not just some catch-all remedy that may or may not be appropriate to address a student's precise concern. In the case of Darwin, we needed this nuanced approach to meet his needs. When crafting interventions, we must consider whether they are responsive to cultural and linguistic diversity, designed to improve performance relative to a specific measurable goal. They must be based on valid information about current performance and ongoing student progress monitoring. And they must be provided in both the general and specialized education settings. And they must be based on evidence. They must be research-based and evidence-based, meaning that there must be proven results for these interventions to have a positive effect on student achievement. Now, like I said, we were going back to DC. Now, both Darwin and I were born and raised in Washington, DC, the nation's capital, the seat of the American government, and in my humble opinion, the greatest city in the world. Hershey, Pennsylvania notwithstanding. I mean, yesterday when I stepped out of my car and got that whiff of that chocolate aroma, I was like, I can get used to this. Mr. Hershey was on to something. But I digress. Like any great city, DC isn't without its blemishes, the least of which is the achievement gap. DC has one of the widest racial achievement gaps of all large urban school systems in the country. The gap is so wide, in fact, that it might be better called an achievement gulf, if you will. Black and Hispanic students perform far behind their white peers, a divide that appears on both state and national tests. For example, 91% of white fourth graders, 91% of white fourth graders were proficient in reading on the DC CAS in 2011. While only 38% of their black classmates and 45% of their Hispanic classmates reached proficiency. This gulf is even greater on the 2011 NAEP exam, with 74% of white fourth graders being proficient in reading compared to 12 and 19% of their Black and Hispanic peers, respectively. Math results on both tests were similar. Even more striking is that this gulf has remained fairly steady over time. When examining the confluence of race, place, and income, research shows that school quality is uneven in DC, with disparities in school quality combining with housing patterns to limit both diversity and equity. Not only do these startling statistics bear this out, but Darwin's own story is a testament to the iniquities that persist in my hometown. However, I would be remiss if I did not mention that DC Schools Chancellor Kaya Henderson has made it her top priority to increase equity among city schools and close the achievement gap. She recently announced her new initiative, Empowering Males of Color, and I am humbled that she has cited the work of my team and I as playing a pivotal role in attaining these parity goals. Based on the information available about Darwin, the school thought it best to conduct a home visit. A home visit was chosen as it was the most immediate way to get Darwin back to school. It humanizes the school staff and demonstrates a genuine concern for Darwin's return and his success. A team of 3 staff members went out: the social worker, the instructional coach, and myself. We all received a brief training before conducting the home visit. However, the social worker had the most expertise in conducting home visits, so we relied heavily upon her. When we arrived at Darwin's home, I was mortified at what I saw. There were people loitering all over the building. The smell of alcohol and drugs perfumed the hallways. And when we arrived at Darwin's door, I was appalled to see it graffiti tagged with gang insignia. Unfortunately, that's as far as we got with this home visit that day. No one was at the home to receive us, so we slid our information under the door and proceeded to leave. It was in that moment that the challenges our students face became real, palpable, and urgent for me. Here was a young man that faced many obstacles to school and was reminded of those obstacles every time he opened the door to his home. As a team, we decided that we must do more to support Darwin. And as resourced as we were at the school, we needed to leverage community supports in providing additional interventions. These community partners were brought in based on capacity issues and resource availability at the school. Here are some ways we can engage the community to further enhance the interventions for students like Darwin. First, we must describe the need. Articulate to the prospective partner what the specific needs of the school are. Data gurus like yourselves can assist with this by using stats to describe school demographics, student achievement, and logistical and budgetary shortfalls. Use a personal story to convey how transformative the prospective partner can be in meeting the needs of students. Research community stakeholders and organizations. Do your homework before attempting to contact anyone. For example, we contacted a DC sports team to get tickets or memorabilia for an incentive event that we were planning. However, we soon found out that they had strict rules around their ability to donate, and we had unfortunately missed some key deadlines. So know who you're dealing with, understand their priorities and concerns, and dovetail your interests with and dovetail your needs with their interests. Be specific about the ask. The stakeholder or donor should not have to guess at how they can help. The more specificity you provide, the greater likelihood that you will secure the partnership or donation. Embrace technology and social networks. Technology and social networking have ushered in a new age in forging community partnerships. What used to take months can now be done in an instant with the click of a mouse. Later in the presentation, I will highlight 3 websites that can help you garner resources for your schools. Who knows? You may be able to get a $65 million jet for field trips. Appreciate the donor and donation. Never forget to say thank you. Be creative and involve students in doing so. Some ideas include thank you cards, a showcase event, tagging community-based organizations in social media posts, or liking community partner websites. Remember, community partners can help fill the gaps to meet the needs of students and can help create greater student outcomes. The next few slides are some examples of ways partners have helped out our students. Our VIP breakfast. Attendance is a huge issue in our district, and undoubtedly, it's probably a huge issue in your districts as well. We can't teach students if they are not there to learn. The VIP breakfast was an attendance initiative aimed at ensuring students arrive to school on time, prepared to learn. The young adults in red jackets are City Year Corps members. City Year are near-peer volunteers that nag and nurture students throughout the school day to do their best in school and beyond. Corps members were instrumental in organizing this breakfast and reached out to a local bakery to provide the breakfast food. The VIP breakfast was a great success, and we used invitees as ambassadors for the event to motivate their peers to arrive to school on time. And over time, we saw increased participation in the event, which meant we saw gains in attendance. The Report Card Conference. The Report Card Conference is a powerful tool that helps community volunteers engage students in meaningful discussions about their academic progress. The community volunteer is seen as a non-threatening adult and can stress that a student's individual success is linked to communal success. It takes a village. Volunteers are trained in reading report cards and graduation requirements by the school counselor prior to the conferences. Volunteers discuss academic progress with all students and distribute certificates of recognition for students with strong grades, and distribute forms that aid a student in talking to a teacher in a course where he or she may be struggling. all students receive a certificate of some sort, including those students that are not doing well in their classes. No one leaves their report card conference empty-handed. These conferences have demonstrated so much success that I had a counselor tell me he was going to reach out to his fraternal organization and make them participate in the next round of conferences because he was so impressed at the receptivity of students to the process. Retired Washington Redskin and future NFL Hall of Famer London Fletcher partnered with one of our schools for an all-expenses-paid college tour. This was a huge opportunity for our students, as many of them, like myself, when I was their age, rarely ventured beyond the borders of the district. This lack of exposure often paralyzes their perspective about their post-secondary plans. So being able to participate in an out-of-city college tour was an amazing experience. Again, without the support of Fletcher's philanthropic arm, called the London's Bridge Program, this potentially life-changing opportunity would never have taken place. This end-of-the-year carnival was an incentive event for students who were on track according to their ABC indicators throughout the entire school year. The incredibly generous support from the community made this a worthwhile event for our students. Spider-Man and Hello Kitty donated their time, and Angie Ange, a local celebrity DJ, voiced her pride for our students' accomplishments. Much of the food was donated, and the dunk tank and moon bounces were offered to us at little to no cost. It takes a whole lot of planning and hard work, but with the backing of the community partners, students can receive tailored interventions, incentives, and resources. 21st century community support must be solicited as well. Here are 3 websites to consider in gaining resources for students in schools: Donors Choose, Indiegogo, and GoFundMe. Donors Choose is an online charity that makes it easy for anyone to help students in need. Public school teachers from every corner of America post classroom project requests on the site, and funders can give any amount they choose to the project that inspires them the most. According to its website, Indiegogo is a way for people all over the world to join forces to make ideas happen. They help maximize contributions to ensure you receive the funds you need to fulfill your campaign. Lastly, GoFundMe allows users to create personal online fundraising websites to attract support for fundraising campaigns. One teacher was so successful with Donors Choose that the principal of the school asked her to do a PD to broaden its support for the entire school. A final note on Darwin. After our unsuccessful home visit with Darwin, we held another intervention meeting and reported our underwhelming result. But we were not deterred. We decided to connect him with a male mentoring group to provide him with much needed community-based social emotional support. That home visit fundamentally changed my perspective on the work I do. It rededicated me to its importance, and I redoubled my effort to help students. Here is a young man living 2 blocks away from my high school alma mater. living one quadrant away from where I grew up in DC, and living in the same neighborhood of the city that I currently live in now. And yet our lives were drastically different. In sum, as we bring the data, both quantitative and qualitative, to our discussion of supporting students, we must remember these 4 principles. Preparation. We must prepare a detailed plan to address student concerns. This plan should be goal-oriented and time-bound, This can be as simple as a 2 verbal outburst reduction in a week for a student. The plan should account for all previously attempted interventions and strategies. We don't want to be duplicative in trying to repeat a failed strategy. That's insane. The plan should also have prepared contingencies if a student is not meeting success or is not making adequate progress. Personalization. The plan should be personalized for the student. No 2 students are alike. Now, that isn't to say that no 2 students may benefit from the same intervention. However, we must account for those individual differences in crafting the best plan possible. We must take a scalpel to student issues, not a saw. Possession. There should be ownership of the plan. An adult needs to champion a student's intervention and ensure that elements of the plan are implemented with fidelity. In choosing a champion, it is always recommended to select an adult that has the best rapport with the student, even if that trusted adult is not on the grade level intervention team. A student is more likely to respond better to a champion with an already established relationship. Lastly, and the most important principle of them all, is passion. Passion. You have to have passion for this work. I'm always amazed and more than a little perplexed at how some teachers don't seem to like students very much. They are the ones who always stop you in the hallway to talk about how irresponsible and disrespectful their students are, who take great delight in pointing out students' deficiencies and constantly regale you with stories about how crazy students are and some of the crazy things they've said or done. Don't think, by the way, that students do not pick up on this disdain. They absolutely do. And my experience suggests that teachers who are most widely disliked are the ones who most dislike students. Conversely, the faculty members who seem to love teaching and love, or at least really like students, are the ones who are the most popular and, in my opinion, are the most effective. Teaching is one of the noblest professions there is. Its nobility does not eclipse its difficulty, though. If you are experiencing burnout, and all of us do from time to time, all is not lost. Find your Darwin. Find your reason to love what you do again. You know, it is admirable to protest the horrific tragedies of murdered young black men lying face down in city streets. But for every Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, and Tamir Rice, there is a Darwin Lee. A Darwin Lee in our schools and in our communities, standing before us, who yearns for a passionate advocate for he too is crying out for justice. As I take my seat, I want to leave you with this quote. If kids come to us from strong, healthy, functioning families, it makes our jobs easier. If they do not come to us from strong, healthy, functioning families, it makes our job more important. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got a very important job ahead of us. So let's get to work. Thank you.